start. I'll share the screen. Share, oops, that and that. There we are. All right, so this is a retake of our last one, which had a something happen. I don't know what, but I think I'll redo it. I don't know how much you guys remember from one lesson to the next of the details, but I'll go through it again, maybe a little bit quicker than last time. But this is about the kidneys and what the kidneys do. The best way to do this, I guess, is to realize that we've got these tubes everywhere. We've got the kidneys, we've got these ureters, which carry the urine to the bladder, the urethra out again. The blue one's the main vein. It's called the vena cava, and the aorta, the main artery carrying blood. The little yellow blobs on the top, that's the adrenal glands, and that's another story for another time. And basically, these two wonderful little things, and about the size of your fist, or it says mouse. They clean the blood. They actually extract all the impurities that we have, and including drugs, and because they can be measured, all sorts of things. It's an amazing, amazing system. The main waste that we get rid of is what's called nitrogenous waste. Now, we eat proteins, and the proteins have nitrogen in them. They're called amines. An amine is an NH2, a nitrogen and two hydrogens, and in different versions. So these the proteins, which are made up of amino acids, the amino bit is this NH2, and we eat this protein in everything we eat. Everything. You think, I'm eating a fruit, I'm not having any protein. Of course you are, because the cells of the fruit that you're eating have proteins. They've got enzymes. They've got also catalysts of all sorts. So we eat nitrogen all the time. Now, so sometimes these amino acids, when they're broken down in the gut, they're stored, and some of them are just excreted. So when they're excreted, then they're broken down, and then we have what's called a nitrogenous waste, and this is ammonia. Now, ammonia is NH3, nitrogen and 3 hydrogens, and it's highly, highly, highly toxic. So it doesn't last long in us, and it's extremely soluble in water. Now, we don't live in water like goldfish, for example. Actually, there's something I just remember that I didn't mention last time. If you ever had a bowl of fish, living fish that is, swimming around, and they're in cold water like goldfish, they are excreting ammonia. Okay, and the goldfish are very hardy, it doesn't bother them. But if you've got fish like tropical fish, for example, where you've got to keep the water warm, you've got two problems with that, because warm water doesn't hold oxygen very well, whereas cold water does. But the fish, the tropical fish, are very, very sensitive to the ammonia, which dissolved in the water. So you have to have a special ammonia filter in the tank. I don't know if any of you have gone through that process. So we've got this issue with some groups with ammonia. We can't have too much ammonia, it'll kill us. So it's converted to urea. It's water soluble, but not very soluble. And in high concentration, it's toxic, it'll kill us. So you've got to get rid of it somehow. Now, animals that live in very, very dry areas, they don't have much water, so they convert their ammonia to uric acid, and that's excreted in pellet form. Now, if you think of a bird, now uric acid is insoluble, all right? So if you've got bird poo on your car, in fact, if you look at a bird poo on your car carefully with an open mind, you'll notice a white splotch and a darker bit in the middle, or somewhere near the middle. The darker bit is the leftover food, the poo, if you like. The white bit is the uric acid. Now it's an acid and it'll eat the JUCO away. That's why you need to wash it. But there's no water, there's virtually no water there. So it's very conservative with respect to water. Reptiles are the same. Insects, arachnids like spiders and so on, all these, they don't hold much water in their bodies. So they excrete their waste in little pellets, if you like, almost invisible. Because that saves the sort of solves the problem of not having enough water. While I'm at it, just remember with the birds, I mentioned that bird droppings everywhere, but a lot of birds are sea birds. They live in the oceans and the waters, and they have another problem. I thought I'll throw this in, nothing to do with the kidneys, but it's a form of excretion that the body has because they eat whatever they eat and it's salty. They can't have too much salt like us. Their blood pressure goes crazy and it causes all sorts of osmotic issues in the body. So they excrete the salt through a special salt gland at the top of the beak. I don't have a beak, but where the nose is, that's one on each side. And same with reptiles that live in salt water. So you've heard of crocodile tears. Now, crocodile tears are the same as the bird thing, and the salt glands remove the salt, and when water shines on it, they look like the tears. Okay, so nature has come up with all these amazing systems to remove waste, and virtually all waste is toxic to the animal.
Ruben, can I just ask you about the gout? The people who have gout,
Yeah,
got
yes.
uric
uric
acid. That's uric acid.
And what happens there is it gets into it accumulates in the joints.
Uh-huh.
And then they have a lot of trouble walking or using the fingers or whichever joint it goes to. And there are drugs now, well, they've been around for a little while, to control that. I just realized I didn't open that up, but
gout.
Go back here. The urea, the uric acid rather, is not soluble, so it's got to be extracted somehow. But gout is very painful. It's like when you lose, for example, in your knees or your hips, your cartilage eventually wears away. So you're bone on bone. And
Mm,
it's the same sort of feeling, except you have little spikes in the crystals.
mhm.
And bones, of course, are living. So they have sensory nerves, and they're very, very painful.
Hmm.
Well, like that sort of thing. So you,
Thank you. But how does it accumulate in some people, the uric acid? How does it?
I
No.
I may know, but I can't think of it. I don't.
Okay. No, just thank you anyway. Okay.
Yeah, I could look it up for you, but you can look it up. So
Yeah, I can.
now we also have creatine. That's another nitrogenous waste, and actually, the muscles use it as an energy source when ATP is not available. And this creatine is a byproduct of, so the creatinine is a byproduct of creatine, and that then gets filtered by the kidneys. Okay, so we've got another energy system within us most people don't know about. And then this is used by doctors to look at the creatinine levels in the blood. So when you have a blood test, one of the things they look at, it's called CK, creatinine kinase, is the enzyme that breaks it down, and how much of there is there. It indicates a level of kidney malfunction because the kidney gets rid of it. That's normal. But if the kidney's starting to malfunction, the amount of creatinine in the blood builds up. So it's a good indicator. So I mentioned muscles, the heart, and the brain actually stores this creatinine as creatinine phosphate as an emergency. So there's little bits of it around the body. And this is a problem with eating red meat, which we generally do. The majority of that, the creatinine in the meat, because it's in the muscle, it goes through the kidneys. And assuming the kidneys are working perfectly well, there's no issue, it just goes right through. But the problem is when you start, the kidneys start malfunctioning, or they're not working as well as they should, you've got an issue, quite a big issue. So this, Chris, now I know those of you who've been with me for a while, as Basil mentioned, he worked out that he's been with my class for 14 years now. I'll explain this. The ASE in a word like this, in a name. ASE means it's an enzyme. So creatinine kinase. The kinase usually refers to some sort of an energetic enzyme that would break down the creatinine. So the amount of creatinine in the blood increases in diabetics and someone who's dehydrated because they haven't got enough water to excrete it. Okay, and so blood and urine tests are also very common if there are issues. So, okay, that's only the beginning. I've given you the chemistry. Now let's look at the physiology and the anatomy. The main function is to remove nitrogenous wastes. That's urea. We don't produce much uric acid, so that's all good. And the other bits and pieces that I mentioned, the creatinine and so on. It also maintains the body's water balance. You can't have too much and you can't have too little. It's got to be, like the three bears, mama bear is just right. The electrolytes, which are the minerals, there's a balance in the body. Again, not too much, not too little. So kidneys control all that. And also they're involved in blood pressure, controlling our blood pressure. I'll get to that later. So what are the components? What makes up this amazing system? Well, the kidneys, they're not very big, but each of them has about 1 million nephrons. They're the active units. They have blood vessels. Now, ureters are the tubes that carry the urine to the bladder, and then the urethra carries it out into the atmosphere, into the environment. Not the atmosphere. I'm just getting some vision in my head, but doesn't matter. Okay, so we have the kidneys, as a similar diagram from before, the blood vessels in and out, the ureters going to the back of the bladder, and then urethra coming out. All right, so there are various areas like these. Now, these are called the renal pyramids, and around them, I won't go through the names, I don't think it's necessary, but basically what happens, I'll show you in a second, that the nephron, the active unit, is very long. So there's a section in the cortex and a section in the medulla. That's an inner bit. So I'll just, that's a word there, the cortex and medulla, if you like. So as we said, about 1 million units of nephrons in each kidney. Now these are made of, these nephrons are filters. Now the filter is, okay, come later. It's called a glomerulus, and I have no idea where the name came from. With a US on the end, it's probably from Latin. I don't know. And each glomerulus is attached to a tubule. Now, when you see something in anatomy with a U on the end, it means small. So a tubule is a small tube. So as blood passes through the nephron, that means the active unit, and there's about 1 million of those in each kidney, the fluid, basically water and waste products, are filtered out. And in these nephrons, urea, that's the main one, and lots and lots of other molecules and water molecules, glucose, and then ions like sodium and potassium, they move in and out depending on what happens, but because sometimes you don't have enough, so you can't get rid of it. So it's extracted and then reabsorbed. It goes both ways. Now, whatever's been filtered is called the filtrate. That's a standard chemical word. Now, the filtrate, as it moves through the tubules, I'll go show you the details in a sec, all the glucose is reabsorbed. We do not have glucose in the urine unless you're a diabetic, because you've got a far greater excess than you should have in the blood. Water and sodium are regulated through the kidneys because they actually maintain our blood pressure. So as you can see, it's an incredibly complex system, and it's essential. All right, so here we have, well, I mentioned the cortex as the outside. The cortex of anything is the outside, not only in biological things. All right, so you've got the cortex, the medulla is the inside. These are the collecting areas. It goes down the ureter to the bladder and then out. But this is a diagram of the nephron. So briefly, inside here is if you've ever had a cat and you give it a ball of wool, the cat sort of takes it apart somehow, and you get this mess of wool, and that's what it looks like. It just a little tiny tubules everywhere, and so from the artery coming in, this is from through the renal artery, the blood goes into each of these million glomeruli and then out again. So the blood goes through, just follow the reddish bits, and it either extracts or collects again. And notice it changes color eventually to this bluish purpley thing. And that goes back to the renal vein, and that goes back to the heart and then to the lungs. So what you've got here is a filter which actually filters nearly everything in there, and then it reabsorbs what's required. And it all ends up in this collecting duct. So each of these little things is from one of these. Down the bottom here, you see it thins out down here in the diagram, and that's called the loop of Henle. And we'll get to that. So here's this, some people call the tuft, the glomerulus. And by the way, here's another biological grammatic lesson. Afferent, anything with an A means in, efferent with an E is out. So it could be anywhere in the body, whatever it might be. You talk about afferent and efferent. So this blood comes in, it's under high pressure because the efferent part is actually thinner, narrower than the in part. So there's a very high pressure within this glomerulus, and that pushes most things out of it. Now, Bowman's capsule, I thought about it before, and I don't have a kid's party balloon. When my girls were little, we had balloons everywhere, but imagine a balloon. You blow it up, but not fully, and then you put your hand, hold the balloon in one hand, put your other fist into it like this. So you've got two, well, the balloon's like it's wrapped around the fist, but there are two layers, and between the two layers, you've got the air. Yeah, does that make sense? So this is what you've got here. Imagine this yellowish, greenish thing is the balloon, and there's your fist, like that. So this glomerulus is the fist, and then the Bowman's capsule, named after someone called Bowman, it's got a space between it. So whatever is excreted and pushed out, it's literally pushed out physically, goes into this tube here. And so from here it goes up and then down and back up and so on. And you'll notice that the blood changes from red to blue in the diagram, and then you've got the other things happening, which I'll get to. And again, this is the loop of Henle, and that's very, very, very important. Here's another diagram.
Can I ask you a question, Ruben?
Basil?
I was listening to a commentary on organ transplant.
Yeah.
And they mentioned that the kidney is the one and only organ that can be used from an older person.
Yes. So long as it's healthy.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, why not? It works.
Mm.
You can live with one kidney. And usually if one of the kidneys fails and they'll put another one in, you can live with 3 kidneys. They just leave the third one in. That's the old, as far as I know, it's alive, but it's not working. I don't know if they still do that. So this is another form of the diagram of what this shows. Now, I mentioned nitrogen before, and which eventually becomes ammonia, NH3. So there's a nitrogen molecule, and it's secreted. I'm just giving one example here. Secreted. Here, the K plus is a potassium ion. and that's reabsorbed. You do not want to lose your potassium, really important. Water is reabsorbed. If you lost all the water that had been pushed out here, you'd be dead within, you'll dehydrate. It's impossible to even imagine it happening with so water has to be reabsorbed. You can see here water, sodium here, potassium there, are reabsorbed back into the blood. You do not want to lose your glucose. So you say, why is there glucose in the urine? Well, if there's so much because of diabetes, then it can't all be reabsorbed. So some will continue on into the bladder and out, and doctors measure that. So you're getting an idea now, under normal circumstances, things that are essential, they've been filtered out and then reabsorbed, and things that are in excess or toxic to us, that continue on and out. And that's basically the story here. So the loop of Henle is really, really important. And it depends on how much water is removed from the filtrate. Now, the filtrate is the word for something that's been filtered. So all that material that's in here, that's left here, is called a filtrate. So the filtrate has to be, a lot of it goes back into the blood, from the, as you saw from the previous diagram. Now, animals that live in wet areas where there's no water issue, animals that live in temperate areas like Melbourne, Victoria, for example, they have very long tubes because much of the water that's used, it's just gone with the urea. It doesn't matter. We have no problem with water. Humans have no problem with water so long as you can drink under normal circumstances. But if you live in an area which is arid and it rains once a year or whatever it is, they have very, very short loops of Henle, and very little water is used to remove the urea. These guys don't dilute, don't. The animals that live in very arid areas excrete urea, even the mammals, and which is not water soluble, and so it uses very, very little water, and you get this incredibly concentrated urine. Now I'll come back to that. I think that's important for people to understand is the concept of osmosis. Now, people think that osmosis just moves between things, and they have no idea. Osmosis is right through the body. Every part of the body actually works, almost every part works on osmosis. And how does it work? Well, to have osmosis working, you need a membrane. So a membrane will let some things through and not others. And you, on either side of the membrane, one's got a high pressure, and this pressure is not pressure like, you're pushing on things. It's a chemical pressure. It talks about concentration. So if you've got a lot of salt on one side and a little bit of salt on the other side, there's a pressure difference. Okay, so it's a chemical pressure, but using the word pressure. It's a salt, glucose. So when there's a membrane and you get this pressure, it's called an osmotic pressure. And the bigger the concentration difference, the higher the pressure. Does that make sense to everybody? If not, I can see some of you. Okay. So it's right through our body, our bodies. Now it controls the movement of water across membranes. That's how water moves across membranes through this process. So it depends on the concentration of the solute. That means the chemicals like the salt or the sugar or whatever it might be, that's the solute. And the water is the solvent. So the solute, the sugar, water, sugar and salt, which is the main ones in us. Water is constantly flowing out of cells, but they also have to come back because the cells otherwise will dehydrate. So when there is a difference in concentration, this is really, 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 really important. Water will flow in the direction of the greater solute concentration. So when there's more chemicals on one side of the membrane than the other, the water will go to the higher concentration to try and dilute it so it's equal. It's rare to become equal, otherwise the system wouldn't work. But if it's not equal, then water will flow towards a higher concentration. So you got low salt and high salt, it will go towards the high salt. The water, that is, not the salt. So here's an example. These things here, these names, under normal conditions, isotonic. Iso means the water and the concentration of the solute, the chemical that we might be taught, say glucose, inside and outside of the cell, if it's the same, water just flows evenly. So it doesn't shrink and it doesn't burst or do anything like that. And that's isotonic. Hypotonic. The hypo means low. So if there's more of the salt or the sugar in a cell than outside the cell, water will flow in and the cell swells and eventually bursts. Okay? So the solution itself, the solution is the liquid that the cell is sitting in. Isotonic means the same. Hypotonic means it's hypo, it's low, and the hyper is high. So when it's a concentrated solution outside the cell, then the water leaves the cell to try and dilute this liquid outside. Okay. Now, so under normal conditions, the cell's normal. Hypertonic solutions, it swells and it usually bursts. If you have a hypertonic, it shrinks, and the word is crenated. And crenated comes from the word crown. So when it shrinks, because it's uneven, the cell, it ends up looking a bit like a crown. All right, so the arrows show the movement of the water. Keeping all that in mind, so when the concentration of the solute, the chemicals, outside and inside are the same, I'm just repeating it here, it's equal, so it's isotonic. When it's a lower concentration outside then inside, it goes into the cell the other way, and that's hypotonic. And then you've got the hypertonic, where it flows out of the cell because the solution is higher outside. Oh, you know, if you if you go swimming in a salt pool or salt water, or if you've been to the Dead Sea and had a swim there, where it's very salty water, you come out, you feel shriveled up. Your fingers are all furrowed. You've lost a huge amount of water from your body because the high salt concentration is very high compared to what's in the body. So the water just goes out. That's your normal biological system. And then you have to drink a fair bit to regain the water. So you can't be in a place like the Dead Sea water for a long time because you just dehydrate. So once the urine has been made, it has to go to be stored somewhere. The ureters, they come in at the back there, and through there, and they come in at about a third of the way from the bottom there, and it just fills up. The walls of the bladder have got sensory nerves, which are called stretch receptors. We've got them all over the body. So the bladder itself is not very big to start with, and it's got a capacity to enlarge a fair bit. So as more and more urine gets into the, I mean, at first you don't feel anything because it's just filling up the space of the neutral level. But it then gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it starts stretching the walls. So these stretch receptors then send a message to the brain that something is happening down there, and you can control it. If you feel you need to go to the toilet, you go to the toilet. But if you say, I can't do it, I'm in the middle of an exam, I don't know what it is, I'm at a movie, I don't want to go, you hang on. But the production of urine doesn't stop when you decide not to go. So it keeps on filling, and it keeps on filling, and it keeps on filling. And it depends on how much you've had to drink. And it gets quite painful after. You can feel it. I've got to go, but I can't go. So you then have to make decisions. However, someone's going to ask, doesn't it burst? He said, no, there's a, what's the word? There's a little valve there. It's called a sphincter. A sphincter, which seals it. And this sphincter, it's the same as the anal sphincter. You can control it. And we've got sphincters all around the body. Pupils, for example, the iris, they're sphincters too. So what happens here is the body, when it's getting to such a degree that it's painful, the body will, where you can't control it, will open it up a little bit to let a drop or two out, just to relieve the pressure a tiny bit. And sometimes if you might, you're busting to go to the toilet, and you eventually get to the toilet, and you get this great relief of the urine coming out, and you just let it, you don't care, just let it out. The last thing you want to do, you're sitting in a theater, you can feel a drop or two coming out, but you've got to hang on to it and just keep doing it. Now, in men, underneath that is the prostate. And the prostate, of course, it makes part of the semen. And then you've got a membrane underneath there, which is another part of the sphincter. So there's a sphincter there, it's a different sphincter there. But that's okay, I won't go there. Now, how much are we talking about? A 70-kilogram man, 5 liters of blood, on average. Glomerular filtrate, that means the glomerulus, remember there's about 1 million of them in each kidney, those little tufts, they work, estimate about 180 liters a day through in both kidneys. So we can produce about 1.5 liters of urine a day. So that's one way of losing water. There's another way, insensible perspiration. Now, perspiration, normally you perspire, you schwitz, you just, you sweat, and you know it, and you're working hard, and your body's wet, and so on. But there's another sort of perspiration, which is called insensible perspiration, and that's water loss just through the skin. Doesn't matter what time of the year, how hot, how cold, you're losing it. So we lose water constantly, half a liter maybe a day, maybe a bit more. Okay, that's different. It's different to normal sweating. With your feces, they're not solid, so you're losing water with that as well. 100 mil is not that much, so it's but you're still losing it in a day. So that, if you look at it, it's a lot of water. So 1.5 liters there, another half a liter there, it's 2 liters, 2 and a bit liters, you just lose. And of course, if you're drinking more, then there's more urine. If you've got, now the other problem is, if you've got diarrhea, then you lose a hell of a lot more than the 100 mil. And that causes problems of dehydration too, if you don't control the diarrhea. Now, homeostasis. The stasis is a static condition. Homo means the same, homo, as in homosexual, if you like. It's the same status, so a controlled level of things in the body. So we maintain the constancy is the word. So what do we maintain? The amount of water, the temperature of the body, the blood pressure, the electrolytes, all the salts, the pH of the body. Now, water output, the urine, we said, could be 800 to over 2 liters a day, 800 mil or more. And what's it affected by? How much liquid you take in, and if you take diuretics. It could be a diuretic as a tablet which the doctor would give you to lose water if you're carrying too much water in your tissues, or if you're a caffeine or alcohol drinker, then they are also diuretics. So, so you actually lose more than if you didn't have them. So with homeostatic mechanisms, blood pressure is one of them. Now the kidneys are very, 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 very important for maintenance of blood pressure. And there's a hormone called vasopressin. Vaso as in vessel. And it's also known as ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. Right? So vasopressin, it tries to reduce the amount of water that you lose through the kidneys. Okay, so this hormone, ADH, it's anti-diuretic, anti-loss of water. And what it does, it increases the reabsorption of water in the blood, in the kidney. It's called anti-diuresis, the urine. That's the uresis bit. Okay. And what it does, it constricts, this is vasopressin, it constricts blood vessels. When the blood vessels become narrower, the blood pressure goes up. So if you're a low blood pressure person, this is important. Then we have another system. Okay, this is called, just remember the name, vasopressin. Okay, vaso as in vessel. It controls vessels down here and does all this other stuff. Now, the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, it's another system, complicated. I'll simplify it as much as I can. Now, when the blood volume, that means you're short of water, your blood level low, you've had an accident, you're bleeding out, and so the blood level volume is reducing, the kidneys secrete, that produces another hormone, an enzyme called renin. It's the first one of these up the top here. Now the renin, I hope you're listening, the renin stimulates the liver to produce this hormone called angiotensin. Now, angio refers to like angina. It's the vessels, blood vessels, and it constricts blood vessels through the body. And by constricting the blood vessels from being certain size to a lot smaller, they increase the blood pressure. It's the same idea as with vasopressin, but the vasopressin can only do so much. If it's vasopressin is there, but the blood pressure isn't high enough, then this system comes into play. So, excuse me. So, this renin angiotensin system, it's a major target for drugs that lower blood pressure. Okay, so it's an anti thing. Angiotensin stimulates the adrenal cortex. Now, if you remember, you saw the kidney, and on top of that, there was a little pyramid. Now, that's the adrenal gland, and the two layers, an outside layer and an inside layer. And the outside layer is called the cortex. The inside is like other things like the kidney and other pituitary. There's a cortex and a medulla, outside and inside. And they each have different functions. So the angiotensin from the liver, okay, so we're talking about the kidneys, we're talking about the adrenal glands, and we're talking about the liver coming in. You don't normally think of the liver as a hormone producing organ. So the angiotensin then from the liver, it stimulates the adrenal cortex, that's the outside of the adrenal, which is sitting on top of the kidney, to produce aldosterone. And what that does, it increases the movement of water and salt from the tubules into the capillaries in the kidney. So remember the tubes where the water, salt, and everything moves backwards and forwards. So what aldosterone does, it actually moves the salt and water back into the blood system. So the renin from the kidneys, the angiotensin from the liver, and the aldosterone from the adrenal cortex together are controlling blood pressure, and together they're trying to desperately reduce the loss of water and salt. Because with osmosis, if you've got too much salt in the tubules where the urine is moving, then more water will flow in because they'll go towards the high salt. So you've got to get the salt out of the water, out of that section, and back into the general circulation. So just going through these in a bit of detail. So the main role is to regulate salt and water. This is aldosterone. Okay, so it affects blood pressure. Increasing the blood volume increases the blood pressure and decreases urine volume. Remember, so because it's pulling the water and the salt out of the kidney, the amount of urine drops, so you're not losing the water which you desperately need. Now, it looks complex, so it's not too bad. I've just gone through that with you. Now, the word hypo means low blood. Now, the EM bit, this is American. They've left the A off. It's AEMIA. So hypo, the volume, it's a low volume of blood or low blood pressure. the kidney will produce the renin. Angiotensin comes in from the liver, and there's a form of angiotensin 1. There's a hormone here called ACE, and the angiotensin 2, just a different form of it, and does all these things. Okay, this is angiotensin 2. So it retains salt by the kidney, by aldosterone. It just controls the water retention. So the sodium is taken up and the water follows. So it stays in the body. Increases salt appetite. You've got to have salt. Increasing the amount of drinking you do. And you, in the end, you increase blood pressure. So it's amazing what the body can do. So when your blood pressure is too low, it has all these mechanisms to increase it. So here's another version of it. The renin, angiotensin 1 and 2 with this ACE thing. And the whole thing is to, these are the full names up here. So what it do, you get to angiotensin 2, and what it does, it cardiac and vascular hypertrophy. So it increases the size and the vasculature of the hypertrophy, just means getting bigger, of the heart. It also systemic vasoconstriction. So it constricts all the vessels, mainly the arteries, so that blood pressure goes up. So then also makes you thirsty, so you drink more blood volume. This is angiotensin 2. So it also you have this renal sodium and fluid retention, what I said before. So you've got aldosterone coming in here from the cortex, adrenal cortex. The pituitary plays a thing called antidiuretic hormone, ADH. And what that does, we also call it vasopressin. It just antidiuretic, so less urine is produced. And all of that, all these things increase blood volume and to save you from dying. Now, so this increases blood pressure. Everything here. Make sense so far? Yes? No? Yeah? Okay. Some people have high blood pressure. If they have high blood pressure, you don't want that, because that could be dangerous. It can often cause a brain bleed, for example. So this ACE here, the angiotensin converting enzyme, you've got a drug to control that, and that will reduce the production of angiotensin 2 and all these effects. So it'll reduce your blood pressure. Because these are natural, these occur naturally, but sometimes it overdoes it for whatever reason. So people with high blood pressure for an extended period of time have to take an ACE inhibitor. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, blood pressure control. This is what I'm saying. So this ACE here. So again, it's so important. From the diagram, I just wrote it out. It's basically what I said before. It prevents enzyme. So these inhibitors, ACE inhibitors, prevent the enzyme in the body from producing angiotensin 2, which and that then narrows the blood vessels, so blood pressure goes up. But if you have natural high blood pressure, then makes the heart work harder, then you've got problems. So what sort of diseases can we get in the kidney? we get a thing called nephritis, and then itis, the itis at the end, means inflammation, not infection. Infection refers to bacteria or fungus or something. This is inflammation of the nephron. Now, kidney stones are a problem. We have uric acid in our bodies, and usually just disappears, but they develop crystals. If there are too many and you're hanging on to the urine for any length of time, they can develop. And apparently, kidney stones are in 4 to 8% of Australian population. I don't know how old this statistic is, but we get people from all over the world, and different nationalities have different concentration percentages. So I don't know, but it's about that. It I would have found this from documentation some time ago. I don't know. Anyway, urinary tract infection. Now that's a bacterial infection, not nice, and you can easily get rid of that with antibiotics. Urinary incontinence. So about 5% of Australians can't control their urine. You get this, especially as you get older, as we all are. And by the way, there are exercises you can do to work on this. If you are starting to leak urine, best thing you can do is do what's called a controlled release. So urine a little bit and then hang on to it. You can urine a little bit more, tighten it, stop it. You might get a dribble, but keep doing that over a period of time, and the muscles, the pelvic floor, will help you control the urine flow. And the urine flow will be at your command, not the bladder's command. About 1 in 7 Australians over the age of 25 have at least one clinical sign of CKD, chronic kidney disease, like kidney function, the presence of proteinuria. That means there's too much protein in the urine, hematuria, and blood in the urine, which means within the kidneys that things are going wrong. Blood should not be getting through into the urine. Proteins should not be getting through. So there are issues. Now, sometimes you have to have dialysis when the kidneys both stop working. A number of things can happen. One, you can have a transplant. The kidneys remain where they are. The old ones have stopped working. They'll just put a new one in, and that works fine. But genetically, you have to have oh, it's raining. Okay. You have to have the tissue must be compatible to yours. But what happens is we can't do that, and people have dialysis on a regular basis, and it takes some hours. Let's set up this fistula thing here, where blood, there's a dialyzer. It's a machine full of, the blood goes through membranes and tubes, which are membranous, and it works the same as the kidney, but got the kidney so efficient and small that this is a bigger machine. It does the same thing and much slower. So blood comes in and then goes around and comes out again into the machine, and then goes in. So it's just to the dialyzer and from the dialyzer. So, and I don't know how many times a week they have to do it, maybe 3, maybe 4 times a week. It takes some hours to get through it. I suppose you get through a few books that way. Now, urine production. What's the time? I can show you those. Okay.
Shut up and take my money.
So I need to stop share. I need to go to share screen. You'll see that.
The kidney is the body's filtration system and produces urine in its thousands of nephrons, the kidney's basic unit. Each nephron begins with a Bowman's capsule, wrapped around a capillary ball, the glomerulus, which becomes a tubule that eventually forms the loop of Henle, before collecting into tubules and ducts that empty into the bladder. Fluid from the blood enters the nephron by filtration and passes along it, where substances are added from the blood by secretion or removed from it by reabsorption. Potassium and hydrogen ions, organic acids and bases, metabolites and foreign substances are secreted across a selective membrane. The potassium and hydrogen are exchanged for sodium along the tubule. 99% of the filtrate is reabsorbed through a mixture of passive diffusion down an osmotic or concentration gradient and active transport by pumping against a concentration gradient. The kidneys can conserve water. The only way that the body can move water is by moving sodium chloride first. You have to create a concentration gradient so that water can move by osmosis in the direction of the highest concentration. The loop of Henle creates a hyperosmotic region in the medulla of the kidney, acting as a sponge, drawing water out from the collecting duct, if the duct becomes permeable under the influence of vasopressin, also known as antidiuretic hormone or ADH. The ascending limb of the loop of Henle, which is impermeable to water, pumps out sodium chloride via sodium-potassium chloride cotransporters from the urine into the blood in the vasa recta. Blood in the vasa recta carries this sodium chloride into the medulla, making the entire region hyperosmotic. The blood, which is moving in the opposite direction to the urine in the loop of Henle, then ascends parallel to the descending limb of the loop of Henle. This descending limb is water permeable, allowing water to move out of it into the vasa recta. This entry of water into the ascending vasa recta reduces the osmotic potential of the blood to normal as it returns to the body. The interplay between the loop of Henle and the vasa recta is called the countercurrent multiplier. Essentially, the medulla acts as a sponge, retaining and releasing water to address the water requirements of the body. ADH acts on the collecting duct to make it permeable to water, allowing water to move into the hyperosmotic medulla, where it is drawn up by the vasa recta and returned to the body.
Meet Grammarly Go, your go-to solution for getting quality work done quickly.
Okay.
And skip ads, Ruben.
Sorry?
Skip ads on the YouTube.
I don't understand.
Skip ad.
Yes.
You can click on it and it will stop the advertisement.
Okay.
Bottom right corner.
Hang on. What am I looking for? Resume share.
It should say skip ad.
Here we are. Okay.
Skip ad.
I'm just wondering which one it is. Hang on. I think this one here. Hmm. Oh, okay. So we've got, I think I've, your production dialysis explained. All right, so this is the one I was looking for. Um, can you see that? Nucleus, it says?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your doctor may recommend dialysis, a procedure that removes waste products from your blood if your kidneys are not functioning properly. Healthy kidneys filter out waste, excess fluid, and electrolytes like potassium and sodium from the blood. These waste products exit the body through the urethra in the form of urine. If you have kidney disease, your kidneys gradually lose function, leading to an accumulation of harmful wastes and excess fluid in your body, increased blood pressure, and bone or blood problems. Dialysis can also be done to treat acute kidney failure, which occurs when your kidneys stop working suddenly, or to remove drugs or poisons from your body. In one type of dialysis, called hemodialysis, your doctor will use a machine called a dialyzer to clean your blood outside your body. Some weeks or months before you begin hemodialysis, your doctor will prepare a vascular access site on your body. Your doctor will create either an arteriovenous graft or an arteriovenous fistula to access your bloodstream. To begin, he or she will numb the area with local anesthesia. To construct an arteriovenous graft, your surgeon will make a small incision in your forearm and insert a soft plastic tube called a graft to connect an artery to a vein. To create an arteriovenous fistula, your surgeon will make a small incision in your skin and connect an artery with a vein to make a larger vessel called a fistula. Once your vascular access site has healed, your doctor can start hemodialysis. To begin, your dialysis nurse will insert 2 needles into your AV fistula or graft. Once the circuit is set up, your blood will flow slowly out of your body and through the dialyzer. Inside the dialyzer, your blood will encounter filtering fibers and an absorbent cleaning solution called dialysate. The fibers will remove waste and excess fluids and electrolytes from your blood. Your cleaned blood will emerge from the dialyzer and continue through the tubing back into your body through the second needle at your access site. When your hemodialysis session is complete, the needles and tubing are removed, and you can go home. In another type of dialysis, your doctor will use the membranes lining your abdomen, called the peritoneum, to clean your blood without removing it from your body. Before you begin peritoneal dialysis, you will have an operation to implant a soft tube called a catheter. Your surgeon will insert the catheter near your belly button, creating a port through which the dialysate will enter and leave your abdomen. Each peritoneal dialysis session is called an exchange, First, you will use your catheter to fill your abdomen with dialysate for a period of time determined by your doctor. Through the peritoneal membrane, waste products and extra fluid are continuously drawn out of your blood into the dialysate. Along with the waste materials it absorbed, the dialysate will drain out of your abdomen into a disposable collection bag during your exchange.
With over 200 flavor notes, every sip of Woodford Reserve Bourbon is a spectacle for the senses.
Okay. So,
Hi, my name is Dr. Mike Adams, and this is a quick overview for people with kidneys that are failing. Need some insight into the treatment options, including the different.
all right. So we've got, let's share screen. That's good. All right. So now we've got, no, gosh. Hang on. I need to do the share. And that's it there. Share. All right. Open that. So now you have hopefully have a reasonable idea of how we remove wastes and the mostly toxic wastes from our bodies and animals, mammals. But there are 5 different other systems in invertebrates. They're animals without backbones. So this is a little bit of anatomy in the zoological area. So the 5 main ones are the organs are called contractile vacuoles, nephridia, renal glands, coxal glands, and mammalian tubules. I'll go through them. So contractile vacuoles happen in usually in single-celled animals like amoeba, and what they do, they collect the water, excess water, and some of their metabolic rubbish through what's called osmoregulation, which is what we had before, through osmosis, and it's by controlling the pressure. So this system are the protists. Pro means first, so these were the first animals. The single-celled animals, amoeba, as I mentioned. So there's a whole kingdom of these guys. And so it gradually fills up, it travels to the outer membrane, it joins the outer membrane, so the membrane of the vacuole becomes part of the membrane of the cell, and what's in this vacuole is released to the environment. And then when it needs to do more, it'll just, it's called invaginate. It'll take a little bit of the membrane around and make a little vacuole again, and then fill that vacuole. And so this is a continuous going. There may be 2 or 3 vacuoles at any one time, and it keeps expelling whatever is unwanted by the cell. So this is what they look like in contractile vacuole. This is a photo, a light microscopic photo. So what I might do is say we go for time. I can show you, or you can see for yourselves. The links are there. These are much simpler videos than the other ones. Now, nephridia are in worms and arthropods, as well as mollusks, which are shellfish, because the excretory systems have nephridia, or a single one of those is called nephridium, but jointly they're called nephridia. And so that's the excretory organ, I mean, it's an analogy of the kidney. So this is a very early type of waste removal in animals, very early. And so the nephridia are porous. That means things can move through them. They're long, they're thin, they're coiled, and they're found in all the segments. So you've got earthworms and flatworms, and they're segmented. Arthropods are segmented too. So here, for example, sorry. So in earthworms, these nephridia are found in all segments except the first three. So within the rest, they've got these nephridia, and there are different forms of them, but it's basically that they extract what needs to be done. And it needs to be extracted from the system. They've got very rudimentary blood system. And you see here, they have blood glands, so they make the blood there and moves through. In mollusks, like shellfish, they have a well-developed system because they're a much later development, and they use nephridia, but they're called tubular nephridia. They're organized as kidneys, so they collect liquid from the coelom. Now, a seal, C-O-E-L, seal, is a space. We have seals as well. They're just a space. So this coelom is filled with water and waste, and then these nephridia collect them and dump them into the mantle cavity. Now the mantle is under the shell, and then from there they're pumped out. So here's a shellfish. There's its foot. The gills there. The radula is this mouth. The radula is made of very hard material, and so it rasps. It's like a file. And then, so it'll eat, for example, algae on a rock. You'll just rasp it away and swallow it, and that goes through its stomach, intestine. There's its anus. It's got its own gill system and breathing system, and there's the heart. So that blood goes through there, and so everything's there. Now the nephridium here, this word here, collects the waste products and dumps them into this area here. This is the mantle under there, so it's under the shell, and the mantle is living, so it's all under control there. And between the foot and the mantle, the area away from the mouth. Now, arthropods could be anything. I'll show you in a sec. They have these coxal glands, some of them, where they're in pairs. And they have an end sac where the initial urine is collected. There's a tubule where the secretion and the reabsorption happens, like in our kidneys. And then there's an excretory pool, a hole, at the base of one of the legs. So flies, for example, since they're segmented, it's reasonable to support that the ancestral arthropods had a pair in each segment. So here's a spider, and here are the coxal glands in there, the yellow ones. And they also have them at the rear. So it links into this area here at the end of the digestive system, and it goes out of the anus. So it's all very systematic, but it mainly, most of it is just waste. So the wasted, the food that's finished, but they haven't digested, comes out, of course. But this is, I mean, this is liquid. So the liquid moves around. They collect the wastes and then excrete them, and in this front area as well. And I'm not sure how the wastes get from the front segment to the back segment. Now, insects themselves, and they have these things in Malpighian tubules, after it felt called Malpighi something, I can't remember. And they lie in their abdominal cavity, and they empty into the junction between the midgut and the hindgut. So it's all these amazing stuff. Now, in some species, they acidify the urine in the distal, which is the back end of the tubule, and an aqueous suspension of uric acid crystals. So they produce these crystals, they add water to them. Okay, I mentioned uric acid right at the beginning, and it's all these waste is conducted to the rectum, where water and nutrients are conserved by reabsorption. So this is the beginning of our system. Our system's like that, but on a much more complicated way. So here's a grasshopper. Here's your midgut. There are these little tubules, and they collect. Don't forget, an insect it's all hollow. So liquid moves around. The waste then are entered into this rectum here, as part of the intestine and the hindgut. So there we are. Here's the tubes with excess water, excess salt, nitrogenous waste, just like us, the urea, or in this case, probably uric acid. And then it goes out and at the anus, and it just drops it somewhere. And along here, it suggests that reabsorption of water is reabsorption, so it doesn't lose too much water. You need a little bit, and various ions and other molecules. Thus endeth the lesson. So there was a lot there. I hope you coped with it. And I hope you might have some questions, which I may be able to answer. I can't unmute you, so you need to unmute yourselves if you want to speak. Yeah. You either find the unmute button or you press the space bar and hold it. I'll hear you. Everyone will hear you.
Do we sit examinations at the end of the year?
Sorry, Basil, I didn't hear the beginning of that.
I said, are we having examinations at the end of the year?
If you want.
Probably.
Well, you've already got the notes.
Yeah.
You wanted a diploma, do you?
Can we bring the notes in for our examination?
Of course you can.
Oh, good.
It's not called cheating at this age.
I'll get my friends to mark them.
You end up with 110%.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's very complex, isn't it?
It is. And the reason I chose to do the way I did it is to show you the complexity. I could have simplified it a lot, but it's really important for people to realize how complicated our system is. It's amazing.
It's fascinating.
It's amazing that it works.
That's right. That's right.
Fascinating.
Yes.
I should
Ruben.
imagine.
Sorry, what control of the amount of uric acid? Why sometimes it goes overboard and get out of control and you get things like gout and things like that?
It's a very good question, and I don't have a very good answer.
Yeah.
Hang on, something's coming forward. No, I can't remember. We don't produce much uric acid at all. It's a form of nitrogenous waste. You know what? I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. In my next email, I'll send it out. A good question.
Thanks.
So I don't, if I knew it, I don't remember. And like the rest of us, I also have a problem remembering stuff.
Yes.
It's allowed at our age, yes.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I'm sorry. I try to answer what I can, but I don't want to make it up.
Ruben, I should imagine that all these insects are still evolving.
Yes, there would be, and the numbers they're producing, they'll still be evolving to the according to whatever environment they're in. Even if you think of flies, you think of they're everywhere, but they're different states. Even there'll be slightly different forms of them, and the further north they are, the further south, there are differences. Yeah. So yeah, Preeti, you had your hand up. I saw.
Sorry,
Preeti. Yes, sorry. I had a question, Ruben. Every year, do you change the topics that you teach? Or
I have about 29, I can't remember, 29 or 30 talks. And I would go through about half of them in a year. So on a cycle.
Yeah.
And then every time so this one I think I did 2 years ago. Okay. And I go through it, and then as I go through it, I said, how could I have left that out? So I modify it, I change it, I add bits, I take little bits away. I don't usually remove much at all. And I clean up the language a bit sometimes if necessary, but I usually add to it. Like the whole section on creatinine wasn't in the previous one.
Yeah.
And it's very important. And I don't know why, I forgot last time. So, but next time, come back in 2 years and I'll probably do it again. It might be somewhat different.
Yeah, so at least for 2 years, you have new topics going.
Yeah, and occasionally when I have time, I've got one, I'm in the process of, I'm calling it skin. And I'm partway through that. And Richard, who couldn't be here today, he's actually a retired dermatologist. And he's helping me with that. And I sent him a list of all the things about what I know about skin. And then he sent back a list, which is 3 or 4 times the length. So there's a lot I don't know. I mean, I did my physiology. My physiology was in my honors degree, and I did some biochemistry and physiology were my specialties. And so I'm not a zoologist. So all these animal things I actually have to look up, they're not in my head. But the way the body works, I'm okay. But sometimes I forget things.
No, that's human.
Thank you, Ruben.
Ruben, yeah. I just wonder how the climate changes affect insects and bodies and so on, like bees, for instance.
Well, it's affecting them by the way they move to an area where they can live. So, for example, I mentioned this in the early this year when I talked about climate change, that tropical fish from the Great Barrier Reef are now found in the southern sections of New South Wales. All right, they're moving south, the cooler.
I'm moving.
The whales are taking slightly different routes. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are all sorts of issues. Plants, the plants, a lot of plants are making their way higher up mountains.
That's correct.
Insects are doing the same thing. So they're just finding cooler places to be in.
I just worry about the population of the bees. They are sort of on the way out.
Well, I know, it depends where they are. I'm not an apiarist, but yeah, it varies. It varies. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are changes. Humans are different because we control our atmosphere, not atmosphere, our habitation. I mean, I just switched off. I've got a heater here with a aircon heater thing, and I was really cold, and then I got a good temperature. I just turned it off because I was getting warm.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have that, I would have problems. I'd probably have rugs, something around.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So it is. We are changing our own conditions, but the animals out there can't. And the ones that are free to move around are the birds, and that's why they move around, because it might be too cold, it's too hot, or too wet, or too dry. Yeah,
things are changing.
So, Basil, what's on your mind? I can see your brain working.
Oh yes, and all I can say is when we do the subject again and again and again, and I've probably done the subject about 10 times.
I doubt it, but
particular one, but they're all different.
Yeah,
because you're always changing it.
Yeah, you know, I taught at high school for 35 years, and I miss the teaching. So you guys make up for it.
No, good. We're lucky. And you're lucky.
But it's I get a buzz out of it. But I also really enjoy the interaction, the process of setting up a class. I mean, a talk. So it's different. So,
are you still doing photography, Ruben?
No, because I wanted to do it. Well, this year was it December, February, March? I can't remember. They said, "Will you do a photography class?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So there were, I think, 6 people said they'll do it. I said, "Okay, 6 is fine." Then they rang me. The 2 more, can you do 8? I said, "Okay, 8's fine." So I get to the room. They've changed the computer, so the software that I was going to use disappeared. And anyway, of the 8, 3 turned up. Okay, that was fine. We worked it out. We went through cameras, how cameras work, how to take a good shot, how to take a portrait, how to do this, how to do that. And they went for 2 hours. Everything was good. I'll see you next week. 2 turned up.
I just want to mention something.
Why waste my time?
I'll mention one thing, Ruben. I came to your first lecture at U3A Glenira, and there were 2 people. The next time there were 4 people, and so it grew. But from the beginning to now, you put as much energy into each one as you have always done, which you have to be congratulated for.
Bravo. Beautiful.
I'm impressed with your memory.
You're not getting any older either.
When I started, they were just building the building where, at Glenhutley, but they put me into a scout hall, and there were 3 or 4 people there. You may be one of those. I don't remember. It was in the scout hall in the south of here. But anyway, so that was the end of I started the end of a year, and then the following year I started with the biology, and that was, I'm trying to remember, 2007. think 2008. I started for my full time with you. 2000. How many years is that? 15 years.
15.
Wow.
2008.
Scary,
15.
isn't it? Where'd the time go? Yeah. All right, guys.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
As
Thank
al-
you.
I
as
can't
always, very
remember
good.
what I'm doing next, so I'll surprise you, and I'll have a look at that urea stuff.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Well,
you
that-
so much.
Thank
Have
you,
a lovely
Ruben.
Very
fortnight.
interesting.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you, Ruben. Bye.
Bye, Brady.
Hey, thanks, you,
Bye.
Ruben. That was terrific.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Yeah.